Hello and welcome to a new episode of Reptil TV. My intro animal, a mussurana. They also exist in nature as piebald, so normally they are more or less black with a bit of red, sometimes around the head. But there are also these piebald forms of them, which to my knowledge even occur in nature as piebald. Great, fascinating South American snake. As mentioned, colloquially known as mussurana. The scientific name is Boiruna maculata. It used to be Glelia, but I don't know which name is correct now or what the current status is. If you look on the reptile database, you will still find both names, which is strange. Nevertheless, as I said, it's a beautiful snake, still quite rare in the terrarium hobby. A few years ago, I owned some juveniles, and now I have come across this single adult specimen by chance. I find them beautiful. You know that I am a fan of high-walled and color morphs, and that's why I have them for you today as an introductory animal. We had our reptile ABC again. We're at TVT, called for your suggestions, and as always received a variety of good suggestions, including two, but we have already covered that in at least 2 episodes. And one suggestion, or rather it came up 2 or 3 times, was Tevi Tokee. I actually found that to be the best. The only unfortunate thing is that I currently don't have any Tokees here. Normally I always have the animal available to show, but at the moment I don't have one, or didn't see any. Therefore, in the episode we will only be able to show you photos of various Tokees, but unfortunately I can't show you anything in hand, which is a bit unfortunate. Nevertheless, I still wanted to take Tevi Tokee. The best thing about the Tokee is that it finally has the status it deserves. The Tokee, such a beautiful terrarium animal, is quite large, looks amazing, and comes in countless different colors. For years that was the case. In terms of terroristic technology, it was actually completely undervalued. They have relatively often been imported into the terrarium world, sold off quite cheaply, and were often not in particularly good health because they had traveled a very long way. What one also needs to know is that Tokees are considered a remedy in Asian medicine. They are caught in the wild or have been dried, turned into some kind of powders, and sold as potency enhancers, remedies, or whatever else. Because of this, the Tokee has always had a hard time. I assume that during this capture, a few live animals were also resold to reptile exporters in Southeast Asia. And so they ended up in the terrarium trade, and as mentioned, their health condition was poor, which caused problems here. People bought the animals relatively cheaply because they looked nice and big. Then, after some time, they became thinner and eventually died. For 2 or 3 years, or at least for 2 or 3 years, they have finally been underway. It has been noticed, oh dear, that far too much is being caught in nature, not because of terrorism, but because of this medical background that I just mentioned to you. And they have been placed under WA, and since then they have really experienced a revival, even in the terrarium hobby. People are starting to appreciate them again. They now cost significantly in the 3-digit range, and as mentioned, they are valued and also bred. People have realized that if I breed them and have a few babies, I can sell them again and so on. And so they have really begun a new second life in the territory through what we are now. So there has really been something good about it. I've talked a lot already. Now I haven't even properly told you where they come from. So they come from all over Southeast Asia and actually have a really large distribution area. The Tokee is found from the eastern part of India or the southeastern part of India all the way to the western part of China or the southwestern part, and then down through to Indonesia, Thailand, and the neighboring countries like Burma, encompassing all these Southeast Asian countries. If you have been on vacation there, you may have seen Tokees in the self-catering hotel complexes or heard the males calling at night. The name Tokee comes from the call that the males make. They make a sound like Tokeh, and you can hear that at night. Those are the males. As mentioned, you may have experienced this yourself while on vacation, so there is a huge distribution area. Unfortunately, the population is still relatively high in the wild, despite the fact that so many have been captured. And Yes, the climate should naturally correspond to the distribution area. Where they come from, it is really always very warm with high humidity. You need to do the same in the terrarium. So a really nice warm terrarium during the day, definitely 30 degrees or a good 30 degrees. At night, I wouldn't completely turn off the terrarium, but perhaps use heat panels, for example. Heat it so that you have a night temperature of about 25 degrees or 23 to 25 degrees. The chameleon set from our complete set is actually quite suitable. This is 60 by 60 by 20 centimeter in size. I would also add a heat panel so that you can maintain the nighttime temperature or have the nighttime temperature as just mentioned. And then you really have a good Tokee terrarium. The dimensions of 60-60 M20 for a pair are certainly acceptable and comply with care guidelines. One or another of you might say, that's already too small, better to go one size up. Of course, you can also make it one size larger. Now let's move on to the diet. Tokees are strictly carnivorous, which means it has to be meat, so there's no need to offer salad or anything else to the Tokee. Everything they can somehow conquer, whether it's any kind of super adult grasshoppers, cockroaches, crickets, adult grasshoppers, of course, house crickets, under certain circumstances, rodents, young mice or baby mice, baby rats. For an adult Tokee, it might take or even take a baby rat in 2001. In nature, they actually do everything they can to overpower other reptiles. But as I said, in terroristics, I would say classic insect eaters, crickets, grasshoppers, and cockroaches. Of course, dust everything well with minerals, Herpetal or Nekton. It's really important to dust the feeder animals. Oh, by the way, we still have it from the terrarium. The chameleon set includes UV light. I would give the Tokee UV light, even though it is actually a crepuscular nocturnal animal. There are definitely differing opinions on this. Do we need UV light? Do we not need it? If you don't have UV light, then you should definitely supplement with vitamin D. But I would recommend providing UV light. They also go out during the day and take in a bit of UV radiation, so I think that it definitely does not harm the animal. If you have an adult animal, you will feed it 2 or 3 times a week. I would feed the young animals 5 to 6 times a week during their upbringing. The smaller they are, the more often you should feed them. And as they grow, you can reduce the frequency. So you can start with feeding them 6 or even 7 times a week if you have babies, and reduce it as they get bigger. And as I mentioned, an adult Tokee should be fed 2 to a maximum of 3 times a week. Now let's move on to breeding. I mentioned it earlier because they are now popular and truly valued. They are also regularly bred. They can be bred relatively easily. The secret is indeed to have a well-matched pair. You can quickly tell whether the pairs get along. If they do not get along, the larger, stronger animal, which is usually the male, will drive the females out of their hiding place. They get along well, sitting nicely next to each other. Really? Quite close with some physical contact, such a Tokee couple. So they really get along well. Once again, a small step back to the care. What you can't do, of course, is to socialize or keep males together. So you can keep Tokees either individually, as a pair, or possibly 2 or 3 together. Females get along with each other, but no males can be kept together. As mentioned, if you have a nice pair, they become sexually mature at around 2 years of age and can be bred relatively easily. The females then always lay eggs. Typically they lay 2 eggs, although it is very rare for there to be only 1 egg, but usually it is 2 eggs. They lay these 2 eggs every 4 to 6 weeks, doing this 4, 5 or 6 times a year. They stick to the walls, such as decorations or wood, and also guard the eggs on these and other surfaces when the young hatch. So it takes about 3 months until the little Tokee babies hatch. And what is really great is that they have a true family life. The parent pair watches over the young and does not eat them or anything like that. There is no need to be afraid or to remove the eggs out of fear that the parents might eat them, as they actually guard the young. One can then keep a proper family group in the terrarium. Everything goes well until the first males reveal themselves as males, or until the Tokee father realizes, oops, There are 1, 2, 3 males among my offspring. And so, at about 6 months old, when he realizes this, he starts to drive away the males. You can tell that they are no longer allowed to stay in hiding, but instead sit outside of the hiding place. And then the time will definitely come when you need to remove at least the males. You may even need to separate the entire young ones, meaning you should do so when they are about 6 months old. That was the brief whirlwind through the letter Tevi Tokee. In the end, always a reference to good literature. Wolfgang Grossmann, a veteran terrarium enthusiast from Berlin, created this book a few years ago titled Tokeh, Gecko, Gecko. Really a great, good book. I can absolutely recommend it to you. It's a monograph about the Tokee. So if you want to acquire a Tokee, first get this book and then the Tokee, and then you'll be really well prepared. Also, make sure to watch the Reptil TV episode about it. I'm curious about your reaction. What do you think about the Tokee? It's a great terrarium animal. Oh, and what I forgot to mention are the colors, the many colors that exist. So, Tokee itself already has countless colors. In the large distribution area, there are soon going to be countless colors. And then there are also things like albino and pie world or calico and such. Really amazing things. If you have any information about it or have a favorite color, feel free to post it in the comments below. I saw this and it looks amazing. By the way, also something that comes to mind, we didn't even cover the handling of the Tokee. A Tokee is naturally somewhat feisty, but if you have them from a young age in general, you can really tame them. Great episode with Kevin McCurley, where he demonstrated handling of Tokees, positive contact with the animal. And after a few days or weeks, the Tokee realizes, oh yes, nothing is happening here. And it really transforms from a little troublemaker into a sweet, cuddly creature. So, this is also a really interesting aspect, just a reference to that. Yes, that's it for now. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and as I said, I'm looking forward to your comments below. Otherwise, stay loyal to me and check out the dockies.